They're dead, Dave.
What, Captain Hollister?
Everybody's dead, Dave.
What, Todd Hunter? What, Selby? Not Chen.
He's dead, Dave. Everybody is dead. Everybody is dead, Dave.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Everybody's Dead Dave, our Red Dwarf review podcast with me, Adam Martyn, and my co-host,
Phil Hawkins.
That's right, we are back to review another episode of the Red Dwarf series. We're on Series 4, Episode 5, Dimension Jump. We're almost, as Philip told me before we started recording, nearly halfway through the original run, which is crazy. Do you think, have I reached aficionado status yet, or do I
Absolutely.
need to watch more?
You get an official leather jacket, like Lister style leather jacket with the badges on and the patches on and stuff.
Yeah.
One of which says Smeghead.
Well, I was going to say, an official Smeghead. I like it. So, for anyone who's joining us for the first time, glad to have you here. Highly recommend you check out our earlier episodes. But if you are new, the premise is that me and Phil, each week, we go through every single episode of Red Dwarf. The crux being that I am a newcomer. As mentioned, this is the first time I'm going through the series in general. So every episode we review, it's my first encounter. Whereas Phil, you've been watching you've seen him a few more times than that over the years.
Just once or twice, yeah.
Just once or twice.
Once or twice since the 90s.
Yeah. So two completely different perspectives. And yeah, as mentioned, we're on episode 5 of Series 4, Dimension Jump, which originally went out in the March of 1991, so just over 30 years ago. And the synopsis is Arnold Ace Rimmer is a dashing daredevil test pilot from the Space Corps, and he's been assigned to test pilot a ship that can travel through dimensions so he can meet different versions of himself. He enters our dimension to meet Rimmer, who has gone on a fishing holiday with the rest of the crew. It's an interesting synopsis there because we'll talk about the opening first. What did you think of this opening? Because it's quite different from everything we've had before, I guess, in terms of the setup.
Yeah, well, first of all, we get the flashback, don't we? So it's sort of his childhood, Rimmer's childhood. He's been once again bullied by his brothers, and this time hung upside down as a swing.
As a swing. Yeah.
As a swing. It was an interesting concept for the beginning of the episode. I thought that it dovetailed nicely into what, this sliding doors moment as they've become to be known because of the movie, where like one choice in your life could take you down two completely different paths. And this is that moment for Rimmer. Yeah. So it was an interesting moment. I gotta say, and I feel bad about saying this because I think you'd probably know where I'm going, but the kid actor, kind of ruins it a little bit.
Yeah, he doesn't really. I mean, I could be wrong. His accent seemed to change halfway through the scene for one thing, and yeah, it just wasn't. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
and like there are some fantastic kid actors out there, so we definitely shouldn't assume that like anytime you get a kid, you should expect it to be like this. But they are few and far in between, I think, at that age.
No, it's hard. I mean, I think I'm a bit more sympathetic now because one of the jobs I do is I work with children in teaching them drama and musical theatre, and it's given me a sort of whole new perspective on, obviously, like, we have a certain degree of what we expect, but then I've had to tell myself it's like, these guys are kids. They're like 7, 8, 9. They're not necessarily going to see it the same way I do, in my mid-20s. So I think I was a bit more. I did notice it, but I think in my head I was a bit like, oh, he's a kid. He's
yeah, and I felt a little bit bad about thinking that, but it did stand out to me in the scene that it was quite bad. I mean, this kid could have gone on to be a fantastic, amazing actor in future life. I mean, look at Daniel Radcliffe. Daniel Radcliffe in that first Harry Potter film. In fact, all of the kids in that first Harry Potter film are quite difficult to watch. The acting is quite wooden in some places in that very first one. Yeah. But even by the second one, like, they'd improved massively. And by the end, I mean, like, they're all fantastic actors now as adults.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, top notch. Daniel Radcliffe is a amazing actor. But look how far people get. So definitely don't judge any kids actors like that. Don't judge their whole future careers based on a scene like this.
No, absolutely. And I mean, it is only for a scene before we, of course, dovetail into a space station of some kind. And obviously, seeing it was my first time, quite a surprise seeing just Rimmer coming on with his long, luscious hair and his big fur coat. And, I'm like, what's going on? And then obviously he meets, who he calls Spanners, who's like, Lister. And all the leads again. And I'll just say about that sequence, I loved seeing the main actors in all these like alternative roles. Like I loved seeing, we mentioned it in I can't remember the title of the episode, but I loved seeing Robert Llewellyn out of the Crichton makeup again. Because I talked about in that episode, he's got a great actor's face. He's got a very expressive, like naturally expressive face. So loved seeing him in that makeup. Great to see Hattie Haybridge as like out of the computer, I guess, in a way.
In real life, in the flesh.
In real life, yeah.
Literally, what she was proposing going to be even more in the flesh.
Absolutely, that's nicely done. I did like that gag as well, where what was it? I can't remember the punchline now, which is really bad. Where she ends by saying, "I resign." He's like, "Oh, do you want to do this?" And he's like, "Oh, well, I'm busy." And he's like, "Oh, I resign." Right, I'll be right there. Like,
no, because he says he makes a point not to fraternize with colleagues, so she says she resigns.
It says, "Oh yeah, it'll be." I don't know. Just that was more the timing. I think for me, it was very like swift and snappy, and I was like, "That's a good gag. I like that."
And then they pay off that gag because she says like, "Oh, I'll be waiting for you with something on me, some food item
Is it maple
smothered
syrup?
on me." Maple syrup, that's it. That's going to be sticky. But then I like the fact that that joke is then come back to again when we get whatever, I can't remember his name, but whatever character Robert Llewellyn is playing in this scene.
I think it was Bongo.
Was it? Yeah. Who is his boss in this, and he also proposes that they meet in a room later on, and it will be covered in something. And he politely declines and says he already has an arrangement.
Very politely,
of course. And then I love the moment where Bongo says,
"Would it make any difference if it was hummus?"
Yeah, like that's the thing that would sway it. What particular condiment it is? Yeah. It's a really good gag. It's a really good gag, and to be honest, because again, first timer, these whole first few minutes, I started to think, right, is this the episode? Are we just seeing like what I thought it was mainly going to be focused in this other dimension, and then maybe our dimension would pop in almost as like a cameo sort of thing, because I was really getting into like all these alternative characters.
There's some great music in this scene as well.
There is
before we jump dimensions, because it's a blatant rip-off of Top Gun music.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm amazed they didn't get sued, to be honest. It's so close to the Top Gun music. His
whole demeanor with like the aviators and the walking down, and it's very much that. I wrote it's Top Gun, but also I think a lot of this in this dimension feels very like Flash Gordon style. That very like, not overacted, but like, the very hammy, like traditional heroes, like, very swish. He's got long flowing hair. He's speaks like this, I'm the hero sort of thing. And the women like, oh, Ace, like, oh, we do. That very like old school Flash Gordon, but it works, and
literally every single character, like after he's walked off, goes, "What a guy!"
Yeah, what a guy! Yeah, that's a good. And to be honest, when that became the recurring gag, I must admit my first thought was like, "Oh, that's the recurring gag." But then when I thought about it, and like we're saying about the sort of Top Gun, Flash Gordon parallels, it made it more funny then, because I was like, "Yeah, it's a send up. They're just, they're sending it up, and it works. It works great." But after Ace turns down Bongo, because, and hummus does not make a difference, he has to try out this new ship, which can supposedly jump dimensions, and Ace wants to find different versions of himself, even though it's quite funny how he's like, oh, there's no return, he's like, right, yeah, I'm going. Like, that's just not a factor at all. He's like, yeah, whatever. So, and he flies off in his ship, and I must say, great model work as always. This felt very Jerry Anderson.
Oh, it did. I did think as the ship was launching, I was thinking that does look like, Thunderbird 2 launching from Tracy Island there.
Yeah, I mean, we've always said in this show that we've adored the model work in Red Dwarf, but yeah, I think it's the fact it was a launch sequence and all that. I was like, yeah, this is the best kind of Anderson stuff, and so he launches, decides to jump to dimensions, and we cut to our boys from the dwarf in our dimension, and Lister and the cat are up to something, aren't they, Phil? It seems.
Well, it's Lister and Crichton initially.
Oh, sorry, yes, and Crichton, not the cat. Yes, you're right.
Cat comes in like halfway, a bit into the scene. They accidentally knock something over as they're sneaking out to go on a fishing trip without Rimmer.
Yeah, which doesn't go well because Rimmer wakes up and they have this whole discussion about how Lister's trying to cover it. It's like, no, it's not that we didn't want you with us. Didn't think it was your scene. Meanwhile, Cat's just got it in for him. It's just like, no, we just genuinely didn't want you to come. And I noted down, Cat's always really had it in for him, hasn't he? Like in the show in general.
Yeah, Lister's always been a bit more like he doesn't really get on with him, but he kind of like feels a little bit sorry for him as well.
Yeah,
I think
he tolerates him a bit as well.
Yeah, even here, he's kind of trying to spare his feelings, rather than just go, "We just don't like you."
Yeah, exactly. So, I just noticed that with Cat, because I know he always like has the impost like goalpost head is the recurring one, but just in this scene, I was like, wow, Cat really just goes in on him pretty much. And on their journey to this ocean planet where there's apparently no fish, they are alerted that there is a wibbly-wobbly, swirly thing heading... I nearly said timey-wimey then. A wibbly-wobbly, swirly thing heading straight towards them, which leads to Ace's ship flying out, crashing with Starbug, and then having Starbug crash down on the ocean planet. Starbug
which was, of course, a purple alert.
Oh yeah, not dangerous enough to be a red alert. Just one step down from red, one step above blue?
Yeah, sort of mauve.
Sort of mauve colour. I like that. But yeah, I was like, Starbug must be the most resilient ship ever, because the amount of times it's crashed, been like marooned, been nearly destroyed.
And sometimes it just seems like by the end of the episode that it looks like they just left it on planets, so they keep getting it. I know there are at least 2 of them, so maybe there's more, but I don't know how many they've got.
Yeah, it just takes a beating, that poor ship.
It's a regenerating ship.
Regenerating ship. Well, it clearly didn't help him in this episode. But
no, but this crash is another example of some great model work with the ship crashing into the rocks and then the water, and another lot of really good stuff.
Absolutely, there. Some really, really good work there, and because Ace hit the ship, he's a manners man.
I caused the smash, should apologise. Only manners. Bring her round for another pass.
He has to go and apologise, I suppose, for crashing into them. So he gets down to the planet and meets our boys from the dwarf, which is quite odd for our Rimmer, and even weirder for Ace, because, of course, do you think he sort of, I guess, expects Rimmer to be obviously different, but still very much, I guess, like him in many, many ways? Yeah,
and this is one of my favourite moments of this whole episode was the bit where he keeps on like suggesting stuff and expecting Rimmer to be like him, and then he doesn't. Like, he's like,
can't hang around here chin wagging all day. Let's get this box up into the air, shall we? What's your plan, hon? I haven't got one. Okay. Right, well, I suggest this. The starboard engine is repairable, but it's a 2-man job. Any volunteers?
Yeah, okay, count me in. I've got a window in my schedule this afternoon.
Not so fast, Davy boy. You leapt in so quick you didn't give Arnie here a chance to speak. He was just about to volunteer, weren't you, Arnie?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, well, let's get cracking, shall we, Dave? What's the starboard engine's thrust-to-input ratio on?
What's that?
Well, you can work it out. What's the craft's inertia rating?
I don't know.
Well, what's the PSI?
I don't know!
Okay, we'll work it out when we get there, shall we?
And you can see it really like sort of takes him back for a moment. He's like, oh, right.
Because he expects him to do it all. And I mean, props to Chris Barry, who once again has to take on double duty in this episode and essentially do 2 different characters. But what I admired about this scene was that, imagine that getting that brief as him as an actor. It's like, so you are playing 2 different characters, but they are the same character. It's the same character, but two almost completely different facets. And I found he somehow managed to make Ace seem just like the Rimmer we know, but also make him completely different.
Yeah.
I thought, anyway. Like, that's a hard job.
That is, and there were some moments, I can't remember the exact lines, but there were some moments when I thought, that is kind of like a line Rimmer might say, but he'd just changed the inflection on it slightly, and everyone would think he was being a complete dick while he said it. But because of the way Ace says it, and who Ace is, and how he has this very quickly established this rapport with everyone, that same sort of line is taken like in a good way.
Yeah. No, exactly. It's like I say, it's all about the inflections he uses, and again that sort of classic sci-fi hero voice. Like, let's go.
Apparently, that voice. I'm in the IMDb trivia section again. That voice is based on Sean Connery.
Do you know what? There was one or two lines where he sounded like he was doing the Sean Connery.
Yeah.
Like it was. I was like, I sound a bit like Sean Connery. So I'm glad I'm glad that seemed to be the inspiration. But
as always, IMDb can be edited by everyone. Take it with a grain of salt. But that is.
So you're saying
it
could have been a viewer like me who thought, "Hey, that kind of sounds like Sean Connery."
It could have been. There is no corroborating link to an article or anything.
Well, there you go. I mean, I will say, if you watch the episode, folks, that as I say, there are just listen for him. There's one or two lines where you're like, "Oh, that's a Sean Conneryism," if you wanna call it that.
It's sort of an Americanized Sean Connery, isn't it?
Yeah,
even though he is
twang.
British still, because Rimmer is British, and that didn't change. It's kind of like that kind of American swaggering hero type.
Yeah, that's where I feel it's like more of the Flash Gordon stuff, that confident, like I say, swagger, like just, the classic American, like, sci-fi hero, I suppose. What did you think of Ace's his catchphrase, roast me a kipper, I'll be back in time for breakfast? Because they use that quite a lot in this episode.
Yeah, it's one of those quotes from the show that you might see on, like, fans' t-shirts and stuff like that. It has a whole life of its own, this phrase.
Yeah.
I like it. And I like the moment where it's mostly used in the same way throughout the episode, but there is one moment where he's talking to Rimmer and he says,
Smoke me a kipper. Can you do that? I'll be back for breakfast.
No, it is a good catchphrase, and actually one of my there is a contender for my funniest moment in all of this, which I think I'll save to the end. But I should say it comes after Ace enlists Lister to help him fix Starbug, and all while this is going on, I haven't mentioned it yet. In the crash, Cat's been injured. His leg's been injured, and it's not in a good way. Cat's getting very delusional. He's seeing lots of different fabrics and items and fashion choices.
And of course, this being Cat,
the
most pressing issue is the fact that the blood does not go with his outfit.
Absolutely not. But Gangrene might, apparently.
Gangrene might. He can make that work.
Which is I kind of like that. That was quite like a dark, nice dark joke there. Because obviously Gangrene, for anyone who knows, is horrible. Don't get gangrene if you can help it. But yeah, it was a very clever use of that, basically. So, but yeah, Cat's not doing very well. Though I've got to say, and I hate saying it, but you got to be honest. I call it the delusional jokes Cat has, because they sort of run from here pretty much until nearly the very end of the episode. It didn't really work for me after like the first run of it, if that makes sense. The first time it's like, oh yeah, it's funny because obviously we all know Cat's fashion obsessed, and of course he'd see various outfits or bits of clothing he'd find ideal, but yeah, I don't know, just as it went on, and especially towards the end when they were like getting back on Red Dwarf, I don't know what it was, it just wasn't working for me. I don't know about you, but
yeah, I know what you mean. It kind of got a bit laboured in the end. And in fact, that whole back half of the episode, once they got back, kind of felt a bit strange. But actually, before we get to that bit, when Ace enlists, because you said Ace enlists Lister's help, they go outside into the storm, which is basically somebody clearly standing to the side of them on the set, chucking a bucket of water over them.
Yep, classic BBC way of doing things. You love to see it.
It's like this occasional bit of water comes splashing in their face, like it's clearly been thrown from a bucket.
Yeah. And what's that song he gets him to sing? It's a something skank. I can't remember what it was.
Oh, I don't know.
I found that quite funny as well. Although I must say, like, it's implied that Ace's left arm is broken or or damaged in a chat he has with Crichton. But I swear, when he pulls Lister back up when he nearly falls, he uses his left arm. But it's never really addressed. Because I saw it, like, when he falls, he grabs him with his left arm, and I thought, right, are we going to get a gag or something here? He's like, oh, I'm going to have to let you go because it's my bad arm. But it's just they just sort of carry on. And it's a very minor detail, but I think my mind just thought, well, because the way they'd mention it, that one-on-one with Crichton, and Crichton's quite serious about it, I thought, right, are we going to get, some sort of ramifications of this later on? So I thought maybe that was it, but it didn't.
Well, that's just how heroic he is. He'll use his broken arm.
Use that broken arm, which he stitches up himself towards the end, because that's another one of his many talents.
Yeah. Rimmer's very, very jealous of this Ace, obviously,
of
because everyone loves him and nobody likes Rimmer.
Yeah.
He did seem to be like, and I'm not too fussed about this because it's coming from Rimmer and it's basically framed as him, like, as a negative thing. He makes some like vaguely homophobic sort of implications in it, like like, oh, he must be. I can't remember what the exact lines are, but
yes, it's some kind of phrase which implies that in a negative way,
and he keeps on about it, and like, yeah, he does, and Crichton sort of challenges it, and we don't get to hear the full challenge, but it looks like he's going to like basically point out that like he's you, so if you think that,
yeah. Would you have wanted to see a full challenge from Crichton, or are you sort of happy with the fact it gets sort of...
Yeah, it gets sort of addressed briefly. I think that's fine. I don't know, what do you think?
Well, yeah, because, I mean, like you say, when Crichton calls it out, you think, right, okay, so he, like you say, he is challenging him on it, and where's this going to go? But then, of course, Ace comes back in and the plot moves on. And I think what we get, I think it's one of those things, I'm happy with what's there, but it'd be cool as, like, a what-if version, like, or if they did film a continuation, like, what would that have been? Like, would it have been something real? Because it didn't need to be long, I thought. It could have been summed up in a few, like you say, a few lines. It could have been summed up as a gag or as more of a, serious, like, message sort of thing. But I think, as you say, like, with what's there, it's not bad. It doesn't detract. But, yeah, it's just an interesting, what if? What if they done this instead?
And like I said, I'm not fussed about him making it, because Rimmer is the bad guy in this situation.
Yeah.
And he's clearly, and it kind of helps actually emphasize that he, like, his jealousness and pettiness goes so far that he'll just go there to that point where he'll say sort of stuff like that.
Yeah, but what's interesting, when they are back on Red Dwarf and Lister and Rimmer are chatting about, I guess, just about Ace and what's going on, and Rimmer suggests, but how would you like it if there was another Lister who was doing well and successful and all that, and we get a nice little callback to the alternative Lister that we saw who's with Kachansky and has the two kids, which I think was series 2, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, Jim and Bexley, and they kept the same names that they referenced.
Yeah,
although Jim and Bexley ended up being the twins that he had with himself, with the female version of himself. But obviously in another universe, he just likes the names, so obviously. So in another universe, he's married Kachansky and named his kids that as well.
Absolutely. I just thought it was a nice... I mean, we've mentioned this before. It was just a nice little moment where the Red Dwarf team decide to just throw in a bit of continuity there that's actually happened in the show, and it works in this case because, as soon as Rimmer said, oh, how would you like it if there was another Lister, that is instantly what my mind thought of that episode, because we've seen it. But as I say, that's when they're on Red Dwarf. You mentioned earlier that you said that whole, when they're back on the ship, it feels a bit odd, but
odd and just kind of like doesn't go anywhere. It's basically just him going, that there's a bit of confrontation. They have a little bit of discussion, like the discussion that you just mentioned, Rimmer and Lister, and then Ace decides, oh, I can't stand that other me. I'm off. And then it ends. It kind of feels like it's missing a third act.
Yeah, like there's not like you say, there's not any, because like once they get Cat back again, he's sort of fixed off screen. Once they're back on Red Dwarf, like maybe that could have been it. It could have been something to save Cat, like the dramatic, something like that. But yeah,
there's
you're
no
right,
drama.
They just sort of get back on. They have their chats, and then Ace is like, "Right, I'm done now." And then
I think
and
this
then
would have
that's that.
benefited from being Red Dwarf's first proper 2-part episode.
Yeah,
where they have, because they have the bit of tension on the ship where they have to get the ship back up, and then they can have all this stuff. And then if something had happened at the end which had kept Ace there but caused something that they would have to, then he would have to help them with next week. That would have, I think that just would have made it so much better.
I thought it could have been cool even with the whole alternative dimension. You've got these alternate characters. It would have been nice to have, see them again. So like you say, a 2-part story could have lent to that. Maybe they find a miracle way where if Ace wanted to, he could return home, or they end up... Do you know what I mean? You could have utilised all that for a 2-parter. But yeah, as you say, as it stands, once they get back on Red Dwarf, that's kind of it, really, for the bulk of the drama or the general story. Because although I must admit, as Ace goes, we get the whole Top Gun repeat. He's got his aviators on. But Rimmer's planning a prank. He plans to drop a smoked kipper. At least I think that's what it was, on his head using a scudder. He's got a scudder involved, and true to scudder form, doesn't work, does it?
No.
Did you think that joke was it was funny, but it was also a bit flat because they pull the string and yet literally nothing happens. But you don't even get a shot of Rimmer's disappointment that it didn't happen. You get Ace looking at it, shaking his head, and that's it.
Yeah, it again feels like it's something that was missing. Like I said, it could have been a reaction shot. I mean, the stereotypical thing, maybe it was too stereotypical, would be that Rimmer goes underneath it and was like, what happened? And then it falls on him. But that admittedly would be very stereotypical. But even just a reaction shot, just something else.
Yeah, because it's an awkward cut. I mean, just on a I guess personal comedy level, did you want the kipper to fall on? Did you want it to work, the prank? Because I kind of did, just as a little. No. Yeah. Okay.
No, not particularly. No.
Yeah. Oh, that's fair enough. I don't know why. I just thought, maybe it'll be funny to see. Because obviously Ace, the whole idea is he is Mr. Perfect, and it would have been cool just for a little moment, just for Rimmer to have his little, I've got my own back. But alas, didn't happen. What we do get is a lovely final Star Wars-esque scroll. Thankfully, not as fast as the series. I could read this one, which basically explained that Ace went off to other dimensions and met many different Rimmers, but none were as worthless as the one he met on Red Dwarf. The search continues, I believe it says. And I liked it, even though, again, it's one of those endings where as we said, it just sort of happens, it's like, okay, that's the end. But I don't know, I like this sort of Star Wars scroll conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, it was okay. Yeah. I will just say it's not the last time we will see Ace Rimmer.
Oh, excited!
I know that's
spoilers.
slight spoilers, but it's more
I'm
of a
excited.
tease.
I'm excited. I did enjoy the character, so it's not a character like, oh, thank God I'll never see him again. That's exciting. I look forward to that.
Yeah.
And as a final little treat, I guess we get a random continuity announcement from Rimmer saying the ham organ recital of the Scutters, who then proceed to play an organ arrangement of the closing theme.
Yeah.
Which I thought was charming,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something a bit different at the end there, isn't it?
Yeah, just a quick... I was surprised, though, because, you have the scroll and you're like, right, that's it. And then all of a sudden, you just got that shot of Red Dwarf, and then Rimmer's like, ladies and gentlemen, it's Wednesday night. It's like, whoa, hang on, what's happening? What's going on? But no, I thought it was sweet. And, yeah, in no great summation, that is the episode. That is... But I think, as we said, I think we both agree it's sort of really the main bulk of the story ends once they get back to Red Dwarf for the last 10 minutes, or last 5 minutes. So with that in mind then, Phil, one of the things we do here is talk about our favourite characters in each episode. So who was yours?
It's Ace, isn't it? Obviously.
Yeah.
He's very good. And it was great seeing Chris Barry get to do something different. This whole episode came about apparently because Chris Barry asked the writers, he wanted to pay somebody heroic for a change because he was playing Rimmer, he was playing the character of in the British Empire, who was also another sort of arrogant and in it. And he said, according to this on IMDb, he said he was suffering from what he described as git overload. So he wanted to play somebody heroic for a change, and he does a really good job of crafting this character that is, you can tell is Rimmer, but is just completely different as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. Ace is my favourite character as well. Just all the Flash Gordon throwbacks, the Top Gun inspired, Sean Connery, just everything about it is wonderfully, delightfully campy and cheesy, but to the best homage and effect that the Red Dwarf team do so well. I'm glad you said it's not the last time we see him, because I'd love to see Ace again. I couldn't add much more to what you said there. Props to Chris Barry, who again does a phenomenal job at character differentiation. He's certainly one of the strongest actors on the show, just from an acting technique and perspective. The stuff he's been able to do in these 4 series has been outstanding, quite frankly. And the other main segment we do is our funniest moment, which I don't think either of us have disclosed yet. So, Phil, what is your funniest moment from this episode?
I had a few. I had a couple, and I still haven't entirely decided between them. We have mentioned both of them before. So one was Ace asking Rimmer to do various things asking or assuming various things of him, and then he either can't or doesn't want to because he's too scared, doesn't want to risk himself. And just Ace's speechlessness at that, and just he's really taken aback by it every single time. So as he sort of slowly realizes this guy is not at all like me.
No.
Because he starts off going I assume Rimmer here has a plan to get us out of this. And he's like, no, I don't.
No.
And then the other one I had was the hummus. From the thing. That did make me laugh because it came out of nowhere. So I don't know. Can I have both of them? Because I don't know which one I want to pick.
Go on then. Let's have both. No,
what was yours?
Mine, it was from the scene. So it's just after Ace and Lister have come back from fixing the ship, and Lister's singing his praises. He's so good how he did this, and he did it upside down. He did all this good stuff, and of course Rimmer's not having any of this. He can't stand it, and he says several gags about the pair of them. But the one that tickled me the most when he said,
Ace and Skipper, you sound like a kid's TV series about a boy and his bush kangaroo.
Just because, I don't know what, I think it's because a lot of my early years I spent abroad growing up, and one of the shows I watched was I think it was called Blinky Bill, which was about a koala, but it was an Australian cartoon.
I thought you were going to say Skippy then.
No, not
Skippy the bush kangaroo.
Not Skippy the bush. I know what that is, but it wasn't that one. But Blinky Bill had basically all the animals were animals that originated or were mainly found in Australia, including bush kangaroos. So maybe it was that association, because I actually watched a kids' TV show where there was a boy and a bush kangaroo. But I don't know, Chris Barry's delivery, and the fact I could picture it, because of course Rimmer is literally looking up to Ace, being like, "Oh, you're so great." So yeah, that one really tickled me. So that's my winner this time around. And finally, we always give it a Scudder rating out of 10. So Phil, how many out of 10 is this one getting?
Well, see, I love the character of Ace, but I think the story itself has some, especially towards the back half, has some weaknesses. Yeah. There is the child acting as well, which is only one small scene. But there are some various things which do bring it down a bit as well. So while Ace and everything about Ace I love, and I love his interactions with the crew, as a whole episode, I don't think I can give it more than a 7.5.
That's fair. That's fair enough. 7.5. Well, mine's a little bit higher. I've given it an 8. And like we've said constantly, it is very disappointing that once they get back on Red Dwarf, the story does kind of just stop for the most part. But I think a lot of that for me is saved by Ace in this case. Because his character is so watchable and so enjoyable to watch, it kind of forgives the fact that there's not much movement with the story. But yeah, great jokes. Love the different dimension stuff. I wish there was more of it with the other lead actors as well, with these alternative characters. Really fun concept, and yeah, everyone's firing off on all cylinders. So yeah, it's an 8 for me this time around.
Excellent.
Excellent. Yeah, and that, folks, is Dimension Jump, that episode of Red Dwarf. We're nearly at the end of Series 4, Phil. We've got one more episode to go. Yeah, so if you enjoyed this one, you should definitely tune in next week to get our Series 4 finale. But as mentioned at the start, if you need to catch up, all our episodes are available. You can listen to them on Spotify. And you can also watch them on YouTube if you are. It's on Phil's YouTube channel, which is Philip Hawkins. And you should definitely go and subscribe to Phil. Leave a like on the video. And also, let us know your comments. We love hearing the feedback on the show. So anything we can do to make it better, make it even more enjoyable, then cool, we'll do it. But Phil, where can the people find you?
Well, you've already mentioned my YouTube channel, so find me there, Philip Hawkins. I talk about Doctor Who and other sci-fi and geeky properties, things like the MCU, Star Trek, all sorts of things like that. And of course, this Red Dwarf podcast is up there as well. We, as a show, have our own Twitter account, which is at All Dead Dave Pod, because everybody's Dead Dave Pod was over the Twitter character limit. Never mind. Yeah, check out the Twitter account for the show there as well.
Awesome. And if you want to keep up with any of my work, you can find me on YouTube, which is Adam Martyn with the Y. I also make stuff on Doctor Who as well as a bunch of other things too. And on Twitter, you can just follow me at Adam Martyn AMTV for various ramblings and goings on. But yeah, thank you once again, folks. Thank you for joining us for Dimension Jump. And we'll be back next time with the Series 4 finale, which is titled Meltdown. And as usual, I'm not looking ahead to any spoilers. It will be completely fresh for me. You can find all about that next week. But until that one, hope you all have a good week. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time. See you later.